Community Viewpoint.
And welcome once again to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pawlak, your host for this segment. And we have the good fortune today of having with us Dan Schinhofen, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners for Nye County. You may have heard him, just like I did the other day, on KNPR radio. It was May 30th, I believe it was, state of Nevada, speaking about the Yucca Mountain project, as I call it, because I worked for them for almost 5 years. But things are starting to change again, and Dan will tell us a little bit about the change that's been happening since the political change in Washington. So welcome.
Thank you.
And
Happy to be here.
And what's happening?
What's happening? Well, recently, the budget, the president's budget for Yucca Mountain, well, his overall budget came out, but in the Yucca Mountain, there are special call-outs. There was $120 million set aside, $30 million for federal waste, $90 million for civilian waste, and that part of that $90 million for civilian waste is to restart the licensing program, so we can finally have the science vetted by the NRC and ASLB, who are tasked with all nuclear issues in this country. So, but the interesting thing is the budget re-release of it calls out 2.91% for ag-lugs, that's affected affected local units of government. I always get it backwards, and Michael corrects me, and I appreciate him very much. So that's about 2.6 million, and that's all of the counties that surround it. And you have a picture of that.
Show us.
That one.
Most of those counties there are the we call them the collar counties. And the thing in the middle, what is that? That's Nye County.
Great big piece there. Yeah, that's us.
And what's in Nye County? Oh, it's the Nevada Test Site, as it's formerly called.
Yeah.
No, it's the N2S2, which is the Nevada National Security Site.
Yep.
They have to change the names.
So on that, those are the affected units of local government, and that's $2.6 million, and we are part of that. We'll get a piece of that. But there is also 3% specifically called out to Nye County. For $2.7 million of PET funds, and those funds we can use for ambulance service in the Central and North EMS, which is desperately needed.
Yes.
It can help us with senior nutrition. We had to cut a few years ago. Up north, we put a little bit back in this budget because we're doing a little better. And many other things, animal shelter that we had to privatize, all those services that we've been hurting on. So that was good news for us, that it shows the President and the Department of Energy are serious about moving forward, and particularly Secretary Perry had said there's an absolute need for a geologic repository, and that he intends to move forward with the licensing, and we welcome that. Bob Halstead many times in public has said that he welcomes the opportunity to have his contentions heard before the board. So we do too, and I wish the state would stop just saying no and engage in the process. They have 218 contentions. Show us it's not safe.
Which they haven't been able to. But everything was just laying in limbo, so to speak, for the longest time, but now it's going to be resurrected once again. People want to do all the studies over again, but the studies have been done. They're there already.
Absolutely.
So the thought behind that is just to drag it on. And what happens when you drag it on? It costs more money.
Right. And that was a hit that we the GAO put out a report on what it would cost to restart the program and everything. And the state jumped on that to say, see, it's just too expensive. Well, how expensive do you think it would be to start all over? Try to identify a new site and then do 30 years of tests on that site.
Right.
I mean, this is the best way to move forward with the program. And let's have the science heard. Nye County has 7 contentions, but ours we think it can be better.
Logical, yes.
Yeah, and the state's contentions are, well, there's 218 of them, so you figure it out. It's whatever we can, that's my feeling on it. I mean, you know me, I kind of speak bluntly, so.
Well, the DOE did make some mistakes early on,
sure,
and they're paying for it in the spades, so to speak, now. But it's not really fair, because this is for the good of all the people here. because all this waste is sitting in all over the United States, and it's in areas that aren't able to be protected as well as someplace like Yucca Mountain.
By rivers, lakes, and oceans,
Yes.
all around the country. And this is a national security issue. And just like John mentioned over there, the national security site, which is part of that's Area 5, that's a national security site. This will be a national security site. So it's not just a state issue. This is definitely a federal issue. So when Adam Laxalt said that it's federal overreach, I was confused, because it's on a federal land, and it's a function of the federal government. National security is the federal government.
Yes.
So I don't understand the federal overreach, but we're real excited that they finally are going to follow the law, and they've put money forward, and some of these funds also help us to bring our contentions forward, to stay engaged in the issue, so that we make sure that we have the best mitigation, we get the best infrastructure we can, and all of those things that could make this project a success.
Right. Because I lived it for almost 5 years, and
Yep.
you've been living it a lot longer. But prior to me coming out here, when I lived in Lamont, Illinois, by the way, that's where all this started, out the Redgate Woods. That's where Enrico Fermi brought his Chicago Pal 1 from Chicago, put it out there. They buried it first next to the river out there, and the Des Plaines River, and they said, oh, you can't do that. That's all water's over there.
Yeah.
They brought it to Argonne National Laboratories. Yeah, that's not good either. So they finally found places that were worthy, which are dry areas in the desert, something like Yucca Mountain.
Right.
But I've lived this ever before I came out here, and I studied this very intently before I came out here. And I wouldn't have come out here unless I thought it was safe.
And I first met John when he was running the office over on Postal.
Yes.
The
I didn't
lower
go
Postal,
but
not
yeah.
the upper part, the lower part.
The
where
old
you had
one,
that,
yes.
the old one.
Yes.
And I had just moved here, and I moved from Vegas. I escaped the People's Republic of California, and then I was in Vegas, and we moved here. And of course, from in Vegas, all I heard was how horrible it was. So I saw this sign on the building one day, Yucca Mountain Repository. I went in, spoke to John. He handed me a bunch of videos and booklets, and I read through all this material. And then I had an opportunity to go out to the site when they were still doing tours. And I don't know anybody that actually toured that site that came back with a negative point of view.
Right.
I mean, after you saw where it's at.
I gave the most negative people as much literature as I could. You find something to stop the project, and more power to you. So
Absolutely.
we didn't keep anything from them.
No, and the material that he gave me wasn't rah, yes, Yucca Mountain's great.
No.
It was the facts. It was the issue. And maybe you want to bring up one of those other slides?
Which one? Oh,
Either one. How's that?
that's the
Talking
mountain
about-
itself.
Talking about how dry it is. What's it, about 1 inch a year of rain?
Yes,
on the
yes.
mountain?
And we don't want to talk about climate change, but it's
No,
probably
but-
be less now.
Let's move.
And this is what the waste does look like. These are the casks. These are metal cask, titanium drip shield over there. Those was added later
Yeah.
because people had concerns about corrosion many thousands of years in the future.
Ended up being 1 million years. The
Yeah.
state insisted 1 million years.
Yes.
And now one of the hits I'm hearing is, oh, well, you can't engineer anything in 1 million years. And I said, well, yeah, we knew that, but the state insisted it goes to 1 million years. So go ahead with the titanium drip
But
shield.
the big thing about that is also it's not permanent. So if we, in some time in the future, deem that a resource, they come out and we use that as fuel once again. And sure enough, if we grow better and stronger and more smarter in the future, we'll be able to do something with that waste and may get some money back.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Amadei talks about that in that he doesn't want to just see a dump. He wants to see reprocessing and recycling. And if the state would engage with DOE, I'm sure we can get that on board with them. And then they could fund our universities. We could be the premier university on recycling, reprocessing, and then that's another whole industry
Right,
and jobs.
That's been proposed for this area, for Pahrump also. God, just think of what we would be like if we had a university, a laboratory here.
There are endless possibilities. Are there dangers? Yeah, anytime you mention radioactive, people are afraid. And yeah, you have to respect the material, but there are so many protocols, safety protocols, and Hanford just had one of their above-ground tunnels collapse.
Yes.
And I spoke to the mayor of the city closest and one of the county commissioners who's over it. I'd met him many times in my travels, and they told me unequivocally that all of the protocols were followed. Yeah. No one was contaminated. There was no release of any radioactivity airborne, and these guys live in that community right next to it. So,
what I think is it's a little humorous is they're not allowed to have coal stored on site because of the radioactivity that's emitted from the coal itself because of the EPA regulations. Really. So, look, if we can have two roundabouts, I'm sure we could have Yucca Mountain.
I've been driving them. I've enjoyed them. Have you been through them yet?
I used to work at the library. The librarian, Susan Wonderly, wants me to take her for a ride so she feels more comfortable.
And I have to take my wife because my wife hates them. And so we had a guy in a meeting say, show some courage, just vote against it. And I told him, you want courage? My wife hates them, and I'm still voting for it because we had $900,000. You know, we couldn't have done one light. So we got a $4 million project.
Right. So we're going to bring our chairs over to Seymour's in the early evening. We're going to sit out there with ice cream and watch the traffic flow.
I've heard. Yeah, but I've been around them. I've enjoyed them. I mean, they're plenty wide.
I met my first one in Saigon in 1970. So this is nothing. This is nothing.
Yeah. If you could navigate that one,
Yes.
This one will be fun.
So we're almost out of time. You want to end with something really smashing?
Oh, I don't know if it's smashing or not, but I would just implore the state, and particularly our local official, our federal local official like Reuben Kuhn, to realize that 9 of 17 counties signed resolutions that want to hear the science. And it's just a shame if you're going to prefer political science over nuclear science. Okay, let's have the science heard, let's have it vetted, and we can finally put this to bed, one way or the other. That's all we're asking is, let's move forward.
As you could tell, we're slightly pro Yucca Mountain, but we've done the information on it. We've seen that for many, many years. So please watch again next week. Don't let this turn you off. All right. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you,
Noah. And see you next week.
Community Viewpoint.